Hello, grade eights. Today we are going to look at Spain. And the reason why we look at Spain is because I know we've looked at Europe during the Renaissance, but the big reason why we're looking at Spain for this one is it is going to be Spain who runs into the Aztecs. And that conflict is going to change the Americas forever. So we're going to look at that. But chapter 9 deals with Spain, and it is called Spain Looks Westward. So let's get started. We're going to start here with at the beginning of the chapter, we hear a story of Christopher Columbus. And we all know Christopher Columbus, who is the person who discovered the New World. If you could see me, I am doing air quotes because obviously Columbus didn't discover it, but he is credited in running into it for Europe. Columbus was wearing when he the story at the beginning talks about Columbus, and in the story he was wearing new clothes and riding a fine horse, but there was little joy in his heart. The Spanish king and queen refused to support his plan to sail west. So Columbus was hoping, as I think we mentioned before when we are looking at exploration, he was hoping to find India, not the Americas, because India we know has spices as spices. It's a way into Asia, and it is a very profitable route. And Columbus thought, hey, if I sail west, I will run into India. What he did not realize is there is an entire other continent in the middle of the ocean that he would have to get through, that he would eventually run into. So he had gone to Portugal and England and France to try to fund this journey, but none of them would support his journey. He then went to the King and Queen of Spain, Isabel and Ferdinand, and they eventually agreed to support his journey. Before we look at this, we got to look at Spain, which, if you look, is right here. It's in a very unique. It is in a very unique place. It where we if we look at Italy being sort of the like gateway for Europe to the east, Spain is sort of like the gateway to the west. So when you're leaving from Spain, if you leave from Spain or Portugal, you see that if you go west, it's just wide open ocean, and not many people had actually gone through that. Down south of Spain is of Africa, if you could see right here, and for a long time the only way to get to Asia from Spain would be either go through the Mediterranean or sail around the entire continent of Africa. And Africa is huge, so it's very time consuming and a very dangerous journey. So Columbus's idea to go sail west to find a new route was eventually seen by the Spanish monarchs as a popular one. The other thing, so the people of Spain have a saying, and it goes, "La geografía manda," which means geography controls everything. Spain has always been in this unique sort of location where it's attached to Europe, but it's also attached very close to Africa. In fact, the part of the southernmost tip of Spain is literally you can see almost see Africa from it. So it's always been in a very unique place within European geography. And this is going to have a big significance because before we can look at why Spain was moving moving west, we have to sort of take a look at Spanish history. And so Spain, at the beginning of the Middle Ages, Spain was a Christian nation. Spain was ruled by a group of people called the Visigoths, and people who had invaded Spain at the end of the Roman Empire. So, just like any sort of ruling force, eventually, there once they set up shop, they eventually fell victim to infighting, and which weakened them. Because if you're fighting within yourself, you can't really protect yourself from from struggles from outside. So in 711, a major event happened. A Muslim force, led by Tariq Ziyad, crossed the Strait of Gibraltar and landed in Spain. The Muslims quickly conquered all of Spain and Portugal, and they started to build huge mosques, and they took over. And many Christians converted to Islam, but some did not. So over the next probably about 700 years, um, it is the Muslims who actually Islamic Caliphate or the Islamic Empire that actually runs Spain, not any Christian monarchs. Um, so the next 5 centuries, Spain was a part of a vast Islamic empire. It was the largest economic trade zone, so it went all around. Let's rewind. It went all around Africa, so you can start to see one side of it at the Ottoman Emperor here, and it goes all the way around, all the way through the northernmost point of Africa, all the way up to Spain, and eventually right into Spain. Um, uh, and if we were to look at what life was like under Islamic rule, we might, with our sort of worldview and our sort of viewpoint and knowledge of sort of some of the modern day Islamic countries, we might think it was a very restrictive one, but it is not. Muslim rulers and merchants funded the arts, architecture to reflect Islamic values. However, once again, like we looked at when we looked at the Renaissance, Islamic society was heavy into science, heavy into math, heavy. It was sort of the center of mathematical and scientific study. Um, so it is a very wide open culture, and in fact, they are seen as centers of learning. In fact, the world's first university was established in Cairo, 200 years before the first university in Europe. And many notable Spanish cities thrived during this time. So Cordoba, Seville, and Granada became centers of learning. Jewish scholars who lived in this region would translate many books of the ancient Greeks, and Muslims knew much more about the natural sciences in Europe. And in fact, if you were not a Muslim in Spain, uh, you were not persecuted. Was It was a very tolerant of a Muslim society was very tolerant of religious minorities. In fact, many religious Muslims wish to protect them under the name of Allah and His Prophet Muhammad. So what would happen is you would be able to practice your own religion openly. However, you would have to pay a tax. So this Islamic Spain or Muslim Spain flourished under this time. Um, However, that does come to an end. And at this beginning of the period we are looking at, um, we are going to see what is called the Reconquista, which is when the Christian states of Spain started to retake land from the Islamic Empire. This is called the Reconquista or the Reconquest. And by 1492, Spain had captured all its previous territory. And 1492 should seem like a big year for you guys because 1492 is the year that Columbus set off and found uh, landed in North America. Obviously not found, but landed in North America. Um, so here is a picture of Spain, and here is how it goes. And we start to see this Reconquista, and by 1300, it is this. So we see what happens. We see it move, and we see by 1300s most of it, and then finally in 1492, this little piece right over here is recaptured. So in the early 1000s, the Caliphate, and this is partly, in fact, is in the early 1000s, the Caliphate area Islamic rulers started to become in decline. A series of ineffective rulers and civil unrest let Spain divide into principalities, and these states fought the Muslims in the Reconquista. Christian kingdoms began to expand their power and influence, and because of religion, and they eventually reconquered everything. Um, Also notable in this time, especially this is going to be especially important when we look at when Spain meets the Aztecs, is during the Reconquista, Spain develops a new way of fighting. They start to group large number of soldiers, all using the same weapon into tight formations. This made them difficult to overrun, and as a result, the Spanish infantry became very powerful. And it became one of the most deadly fighting forces in Europe. The Spanish brought this fighting style to the Americas, and it becomes very successful when they run into groups such as the Aztecs, the Mayans, and the Inca in South America. Um, so the two people who sort of finished this off and became the most two of the most powerful rulers in Europe were was a couple called King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. They were very religious people, and in fact, because of their conquest, they were seen by the Pope as the most Catholic monarchs. The Reconquista was a process that happened over many years. Many Christian crusaders from across Europe came to help the Spanish Christian forces win the territory from the Muslims. And by 1269, only part was under Muslim control. And finally, under Ferdinand and Isabella, they it was captured, and they were seen as having a special place in the Pope's heart and in all of Catholicism's heart. So they become very powerful and very influential. And so one of the first things they decide to do, and because it becomes a Christian empire, um, they are going to be the exact opposite as the Islamic forces. They, in fact, want everyone to convert to Christianity, or, and when I say Christianity, they call it Catholicism, or they want them to get out or die. So they set up what is called the Spanish Inquisition. When we get to this part, a lot of you have probably heard of it before. And so what the Spanish Inquisition is a group of church officials whose sole job it is to root out heretics, who are people who are not Catholics, and make them convert or die. So the Inquisition becomes a state run system of courts where any non Catholic went on trial. Once the Reconquista was complete, Muslim and Jews had to be converted. They had to leave Spain. And when I say leave Spain, they had to leave all their property, all their things, and just leave themselves, or they died. So some obviously, one of the big issues with the Spanish Inquisition is, regardless of how much you torture someone, regardless of how much you threaten someone, you truly cannot convert what is in their heart. So a lot of people did what can be seen as fake conversions, where they then said they were Catholic, but they still held their religious beliefs. And one of the biggest things of this is, one of the biggest groups who were persecuted is, just like we've talked about earlier, in the Renaissance, is the Jewish people. Um, there we see at this time what is called the expulsion of Jews, which means the king gave them 3 months' time in which to leave. About their number, there is no agreement, but after many inquiries, there has been approximately 50,000 families. And this is important. It's not 50,000 people, 50,000 families. So it's probably over at least over 100,000 people who all were forced to leave Spain, and they were not allowed to carry their possessions with them. And they had to leave their life savings, so it was a major event. Um, and part of the reason was this is because they were worried about the spread of Islam in other countries, and so they were worried about it. So this is how King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella um, viewed a threat to Catholicism and to Spain. Is they thought if they allowed religious pluralism or more than one religion, it would weaken the Spanish country. So this is part of the reason why they brought in the Inquisition. It doesn't excuse it, but this is sort of their mindset, and this is sort of their worldview when they do this. Um, they also felt like they had a religious duty to convert as many people as possible, um, even beyond their borders. So this is one of the main reasons for exploration, as we saw, is they want to convert souls to Catholicism. Um, and he and that is one of the ways that Columbus wins their favor and wins their money, is because he promises to take missionaries with him, and he promises he's going to find lands of millions of heretics, millions of heathens, to convert to the Catholic faith. And so Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand really see this as their way not only to extend their power and extend their wealth, but also to ensure their place in Catholic history and ensure their place in heaven. And this starts with that all Spanish explorers, and there are many, they start to bring missionaries. And their whole reason for that is when they met people, they would bring them the word of God, and they'd convert millions of people around the world, and they do. And if you go to places where the Spanish landed, so South America and Mexico, the main religion in those areas is Catholicism, and this is because of the missionaries and the religious orders such as the Jesuits and the Franciscans who go with these explorers and a group of people called the conquistadors, who are people who are conquering new lands, and they bring missionaries in order to convert. So why do they do this? And so one of the main reasons is we have the three G's, or the three of the main reasons. So they do it for gold, they do it for glory, and they do it for God. In the Renaissance, Spain has used up all its gold. So, as we know, war is very expensive, and the war against the Islamic Empire basically bankrupted Spain. So, when word and ideas of entire cities made of gold in South America and in the Americas come back, it is a way that they can regain some of this wealth. So war is expensive. A nation, they have to feed its soldiers and train recruits. So they see this as a way for them to gain gold and money. So Columbus, when he discovers when he lands in Hispaniola, not discovered once again, he finds a little bit gold. But what he does is he lies to Isabel and Ferdinand, and he says he finds a beautiful island with a lot of old agriculture, and he claims to have found magnificent rivers with running with gold. This electrifies Spain, and the king and queen approve a bunch of new voyages, and it also takes a group of people called the conquistadors, um, and it inspires them to go to the new world and try to carve out empire for themselves. So what this does is, because the way inheritance works is, if you are the son of a noble person, if you are the firstborn son, sorry, if you are the firstborn son, you get your father's estate, you get all his wealth and riches. If you are the second-born son, you get little to nothing. So when word of all this treasure and all this stuff comes into Spain, all these second and third-born children of nobles realize this is how they make their wealth, this is how they get their glory. So they go and they try to find people who will sponsor them, and they form armies with each other, and they go to the new world in order to get more wealth and gain the glory for themselves. And this is what brings the group of people to Mexico that are eventually going to take over the Aztecs. And we're going to learn a lot more about that. In fact, next chapter, we're going to look at this process and how the Aztecs were defeated by the Spanish, which is a lot more, but is this group of people who do. So thank you very much for listening to this. I hope this helped. If you have any questions, as always, please reach out to me. Have a great